Most people will create the dynamic they had with their mom or the feeling they had with their mom in some way in an intimate relationship. So much of that is around just unconscious emotions and unconscious unmet needs that we're carrying, that when we're around our mom, she triggers that part of us that is still living that still has that unmet need, that still has that sadness or that fear of, that she couldn't take care of us how we needed or create safety, or that she was unpredictable or whatever it was. There was a lot of things about my relationship with my mother growing up that were traumatic for me and did create a lot of wounding and created a lot of the patterns that I've been dismantling and teaching about today. But I'm not angry with her. I don't villainize her. I love her. Welcome to Reclaiming Consciousness. I'm Elise Basine, trauma and breathwork expert and creator of the Metamorphosis Method, the only methodology bridging the gap between spiritual healing and clinical trauma work. For many years, our consciousness has been hijacked by societal and cultural programming, religion, the media, and familial and ancestral trauma. In this podcast, you'll discover my unique perspective on trauma healing and how it is the gateway to fully reclaiming your consciousness. You'll hear stories and teachings that expand your mind as you discover how every relationship challenge, business block, or limiting pattern is an invitation to reclaim the parts of your consciousness you unknowingly gave away. Get ready to go deep. Now let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I have been doing this series on YouTube around the mother wound. So I figured I would stay in that vein and talk about it a little bit on the podcast, but more from a personal lens and just kind of my journey with this. It's funny because I feel like in one way I created a whole business around my mother wound. But then I also at the same time feel like the things that I talk about and the way that I describe the mother wound, it's not actually reflective of my relationship with my mother in certain ways, and I've had a journey with this. And it's funny because I have a lot of clients who one of their biggest trepidations around coming on the podcast and sharing their journey with me and their transformation is because they don't want their moms to hear it. Like they don't want their mom to hear about their experience and feel bad or whatever. And I've had that same experience too, honestly. And I feel like that's where we have to be able to hold multiple perspectives, multiple realities at the same time. Like I always say, your mom can be one of the people that you love the most in the world and that you feel the most connected to, and also one of the people that hurt you the most, and we have to be able to hold both of those things. And largely, I think we can, but we don't know that our mothers can. And I have definitely been a little trepidatious around sharing certain things, specifically with my own story, but also just about the mother wound in general, because I don't want my mom to feel sad, And like when I first started my business, she would make comments on my posts about, the mother wound or about childhood wounding and stuff. And then I just told her, I basically set a boundary and was like, don't comment on my posts. Don't make it about you. It's not about you, which is actually true. There was a lot of things about my relationship with my mother growing up that were traumatic for me and did create a lot of wounding and created a lot of the patterns that I've been dismantling and teaching about today. But I'm not angry with her. I don't villainize her. I love her. We have a really good relationship now. And I feel like I got to the point where like I'm 99% neutral with her most of the time, which is huge because I used to not be able to be in the same room with her for very long without getting triggered. And I think that can be one of the confusing things for people is like, my mom's a great person or I love her so much, but why does she annoy me so much or why does she trigger me so much? And I think largely so much of that is around just unconscious emotions and unconscious unmet needs that we're carrying, that when we're around our mom, she triggers that part of us that is still living that still has that unmet need, that still has that sadness or that fear of, that she couldn't take care of us how we needed or create safety, or that she was unpredictable or whatever it was. But also at the same time, like, I can hold that. I know my mom loved me. I know she did everything she could for me. And she was a great mom in a lot of ways. And there's things that I like deeply appreciate about her as a person and as a mom. And at the same time, I think in simple terms, her trauma that she didn't deal with got projected onto me, and I internalized it in certain ways that were detrimental and dysfunctional for me, right? And that's largely how it goes. And I always like make this, it's not a joke, but kind of a joke. I always make jokes around this stuff, and I'm like, that's kind of like a dark thing, but we have to make light of this stuff. People who have had, a mom who abandoned them, like actually wasn't there or really neglected them or whatever, sometimes that kind of thing is easier in a sense because it's so obvious. It's like, okay, well, my mom really wasn't there for me, or she was abusive, or she was neglectful. And it's really obvious what the trauma was and how it impacted you. But when you have a mom who loved you and cared for you and was there for you in a myriad of ways and is like a good person and somebody that you admire, it can be a lot harder to really understand these more subtle ways that the relationship impacted you. And I think that's where people really can like shy away from this work, because they think like it must not be that, or I'm not that. Like, I don't have that with my mom because my mom is like this great person. And we have to be able to recognize both of those things, because it's a very different thing, the face that someone shows to the world and then who they are in very intimate settings. Those two things are always very different. And I used to have this experience when I was growing up where my mom would be in one of her like freak out states. Like, she would get into these like freak out modes or whatever and be like I would almost see it as like she was like, what is that cartoon character that spins? It's not Wile E. Coyote, it's like the other one. Anyway, I can't remember the name, but my mom was like that. She was like a tornado, like running through the house and like yelling and like, but then like the phone would ring and she would be like, hello, oh, hi, how are you? And like be the nicest person. And that would always be so cringy to me because I'm like, why is she like that to like other people, but not to me? And again, I get it now as an adult and I'm not mad at her, but it's like those types of little things that you can actually internalize as like, I don't matter, or I'm not important, or I'm not good enough, or there's something wrong with me. And again, it's not blaming her, villainizing her, but it's really being able to look at the impact of like smaller, subtle relational things over time that create these like deficits and create these beliefs or feelings that we're not conscious of that actually like drive all of the results that we have in our lives. Being able to dismantle that relationship and really look at it and the way it impacted you, I think it's not even just crucial, it's what this work truly is. I always have this joke with my clients that like it always comes back to your mom. Like, you're always recreating that, either like that feeling, like how you felt around her, or like you're being her. And that's the other thing that is like hard to accept. And I've had these moments where I can feel that I'm like being her, like in certain situations. It's like this like anxiety bubbles up and I feel like overwhelmed or out of control. Like, I think it's so important to remember that at one point you were her, like you were created inside of her. So there was a lot of time where you didn't even know you were a separate person. And we unknowingly identify as our mothers or parts of them because of that. It's just really important to kind of understand like all the nuances of this and really look at your own story and get really honest about how it impacted you, without feeling guilty, like you're saying your parents did something wrong, or without feeling like you have already done so much work around it. I feel like when people say that, I'm just like, clearly there's more because you're here. And that's not to be like rude, but whenever someone says that, I kind of am like, okay, well, you're obviously earlier on in the journey, because once you get further along enough, you know that this is not something that you just like address for a couple months and then it's done. This is like an ongoing process of like peeling back the layers of deeper and deeper ways that your early childhood experiences impacted you so that you can grow. It's not so that you can like just have fun digging around in the fucking mud. Like, it's really about growth. And I think that it's important when you are doing something like running a business, for example, to know that it's always going to give you opportunities to grow, right? Or in a relationship, it's always going to give you an opportunity to grow. And most people will create the dynamic they had with their mom or the feeling they had with their mom in some way in an intimate relationship. So if you're having a challenge or a recurring theme or something that you keep hitting in your relationship with your partner, this is where you're going to find the solution, is in looking at this relationship. It's something that is always an ongoing awareness to have. And for my relationship with my mom specifically, I think it's been really hard to put it out there in, its rawest form, because obviously I don't want to hurt her feelings. And I think we've moved through so much of that. Last year, we had this thing happen where one of her friends said something to her like, "Oh, I didn't realize Elise had such a traumatic childhood," or something like that. And I guess it was based on like, her reading my internet posts or whatever. And I felt really bad because like I didn't want my mom to feel bad or whatever. But my mom has actually gotten to the point where she doesn't necessarily take what I say personally. She knows that like, this is what I do. This is my expertise. It's not about just me crying on the internet about how bad my mom was or something. And my mom was like, no, that's just what she does. Like, that's just her expertise. It's not about her childhood. And it was a really great moment because I was able to see that like, because I've been holding this boundary with my mom for so long, that like, this isn't about you, even though like it is, but it's not. It's weird. Like, but it's not something for you to take personally. It's just how I'm making sense of all of this so I can help other people. And largely a lot of the stuff I share is drawing on my experience with clients. It's not just me. But that moment was really validating because, my mom was able to handle that in a way where it didn't really hurt her, impact her, or whatever. But it can be a tricky thing. And I think that that's my point in all of this, is whenever we're looking at our relationships, especially with our parents, there's always going to be good and bad. It's not ever black and white. It's not ever like, oh, this was horrible. Even people who've had like terrible trauma with their parents, I guarantee you they're always going to be able to remember something good also, something that they learned from them or something that they gave them or whatever it is. So it's really important that we are not black and white about this type of work, and we're really just able to look at things in an honest way in service to our growth. And that's it. It's really just about that. It's not about, oh my gosh, I have to go back and like relive everything or figure all this stuff out. Like, you really don't have to figure anything out. All you have to do is look at where things aren't working, pinpoint the feelings that are coming up that usually are feelings from this relationship, and then feel them. And that's the part where everyone gets confused. It's like, wait, what? And that's the part that I think I've done a really good job at making very simple and tangible for you, is like how to effectively move through an emotion, right? And I'll have a lot of clients come to me and be like, because I say like, well, you have to feel the feelings. And they're like, but I've been feeling the feelings. I've been crying. I've been doing this for so long. I've been feeling the feelings. And it's like, Yes. And there is actually an effective way to process emotion that most people don't know, right? And a lot of it has to do with the lens that you're seeing it through. So if you're just feeling an emotion because you're having a fight with your partner or something, and you start to feel like you're not good enough, or like you're always being criticized, or you feel rejected, or whatever it is, if you're just crying because that feeling comes up and you're crying about the situation, that's not emotional processing. That's just like dramatizing a story or a situation, even though it feels really charged and it feels really, the emotion is there. But the emotion is so charged and so intense because it is triggering a much deeper emotion. So if you're able to feel that feeling through the lens of where that emotion actually started, then you're processing, right? And that's part of it. But then you also have to be able to know how to like ride the wave of an emotion, because there's like an emotional arc, right? Where the emotion comes on, then you start to feel it and process it through the lens of where it started. Then you have to be able to ride the wave of really letting it come on and then go down, like letting it peak and come down. And then you have to be able to notice when it's like coming into completion. And if you stop it before it comes to completion, then you're like suppressing it again. But if you keep spinning in it after it's kind of like coming to completion, then you'll just start spinning in it and you don't get anywhere. So you have to be able to ride that wave, know when it's done, and then be able to create a shift. And that's really what I teach people, is being able to effectively feel and process emotion. And no one really talks about this. It's something that I think is, we're expected to know or something, but like nobody knows. Nobody even knows that they're not like feeling their feelings or connected to their emotions or in their body, right? They know they feel something about what's in front of them, but they don't know why it feels so charged or how to actually process it from the level of like the body, so that it is moved out of the body, so that it's not creating a charge or a trigger in your life anymore. And I think that's it's such an important piece of this work, and it's really what creates the change. And I think that learning how to do that is one of the reasons why people really will get results. I know it's why I've gotten results, because what really drives the pattern, any pattern of behavior, or any pattern of feeling, or any like lens you're looking at the world through, is unconscious emotions that are being held in the body and that like recreate themselves over and over again in an effort to be felt and reconciled. But we have to like really know how to do that consciously and intentionally. And I think once you learn how to do that, then you can move through things so much more quickly, and you can keep growing and expanding, and you're not going to hit these walls all the time, you know? So anyway, I just kind of went on a tangent with that. But I think I say all that to say, when we're looking at really what it takes to move forward with certain things where you felt stuck, those are really the key elements, you know? And I really want to encourage everyone to watch the YouTube series that I'm doing on the mother wound, because I also have a breath work along with it. And that can be something that it can be great for you to start to explore on your own if you are curious about diving deeper into this work. Doing some of that on your own and just kind of seeing what happens is a great way to kind of have like a measuring stick of whether or not you're ready to dive in. Because I know it can feel scary, it can feel confronting, it can feel overwhelming to dive into this type of work. But it really is a matter of, are you at the place where you are really tired of feeling the same way over and over again, or you're really tired of repeating the same pattern over and over again, or you really want to grow and expand because you can see there are places where you are limiting yourself or you're stopping yourself, either in a business sense or a career or financially or whatever. And you're like, okay, I don't know how to like get past this plateau on my own. I think those are really good indicators that you're ready to dive in a way where you're getting support and creating an outcome. I think that's everything. I just wanted to do another more like personal riff on the mother wound. And, you know, I think my story is actually like a good example of how this work can be more subtle and nuanced, because I would always have this thing happen where, and some of you can probably relate to this, where my mom, like everybody loves my mom. And anytime I like run into somebody that knows my mom, they're always like, oh my God, how's your mom? And I always used to be in this place where I'm like, why does everyone love my mom so fucking much? She drives me insane. But then I would feel bad that I would be like, well, what's wrong with me that like everyone loves my mom and I'm the only one who like gets annoyed by her? But then as I started to peel back so many of these layers, like, yeah, there was a lot of things that were more obvious. Like my mom definitely could not regulate her emotions. She had these like meltdowns and freakouts, especially when I was younger, that really sent me out of my body and traumatized me and put me into like this hypervigilance state in a lot of ways. But then, there were also just like these more nuanced things of like, because it always felt like she was one step away from kind of like exploding, or she was like carrying so much or so anxious and like neurotic all the time. I didn't feel like she was really a safe space for me to have any emotion or to get support. And I actually felt like if I brought anything to her, it would make it worse. It would be worse, So what I learned to do is like literally deal with everything on my own. I never asked my parents for any sort of like emotional support or their advice. I just really learned to be like hyper independent and handle everything by myself. And while that is like good in certain ways, it really created a way of relating for me where I didn't know how to receive support. I thought it was safer to hide things. Like if I was feeling a certain way or I was struggling with something, I didn't know how to share that with people. And like, that's something that I really had to learn and start to feel safe with, and something that I am still learning. And I think a lot of people might be like this, but you don't even realize you're like this because it's something that is so deep and ingrained that you don't even necessarily realize you're doing it. And that's something that I really had to, and I'm still peeling back the layers on, but it's these much more nuanced things, and even when I have support, it's like even being able to feel comfortable leaning into that support has been such a journey for me, because I was coming from a foundation of seeing support as not being safe, or in some way, if I got that support, I was going to have to like pay for it in some way. Like there was going to cause some sort of backlash or danger or something that I was going to have to deal with later on. It felt really unsafe. And I see that with a lot of my clients too, which is why I'm bringing it forward, because that's not something that you would necessarily be able to pinpoint or be aware of necessarily, because a lot of these childhood coping mechanisms are these like unconscious responses to not feeling safe, right? So it's almost like if somebody, was trying to like push you over the edge of a cliff or something, you would fight back, right? You would try to save yourself. You wouldn't think, should I save myself? Should I fight back? Like it would just be a response where you would try to fight back. That's what these coping mechanisms are. They're not conscious. They're like responses to trying to get your needs met. And so that's why they're so ingrained and so subtle, and we don't realize that we're doing them most of the time. And a lot of what I do with clients is just being able to point that out and be like, look, this is what's happening. It's the same thing with your mom. And they're like, oh my God. And then we can shift it. And that's when everything opens up and things really start to change, because so much of this is just in your unconscious. So if you're listening to this and you don't think it applies to you, it probably does, but you're just not aware of it. And that's like some of the hard parts of this work, is just so much of it is so unconscious. And you don't realize it until we really like get under the hood of the car and dive in. But the way you can tell is like, if there's a thing that's not working, or there's a place where you're not happy, or there's a place where like, why am I capped here? Or I want more, but I don't think I'm allowed, or whatever it is, right? It's something like that. And that tells you there's something that's not conscious that's going on that you are like subscribing to or playing out or believing or whatever it is. And that's why it takes a container and it takes someone else to be able to look at that and point it out. And that's pretty much what we do in the metamorphosis. So yeah, I think I'll leave it for now. I am getting ready to leave for India on Sunday. And I'm super excited. For those of you who've been following my journey with Kalari, I've been studying this ancient Indian martial art called Kalari for the last 2 years, and you can only learn it in India. I've been learning it online from my teacher in India. It's very obscure. Nobody really knows about it. I even will ask Indian people about it, and most of them don't know about it because it's very ancient. And when the British colonized India, they tried to completely wipe it out because it was so powerful. And it really has changed my life in so many ways. And I will definitely do a podcast episode about that. It's just been so hard for me to find the words as to how it changed my life. So hopefully I will have them after India, or I might do an episode from there. So please reach out to me if you have questions about any of this work, about the metamorphosis. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube because I've been sharing a lot of great stuff over there, including breath work and journaling that you can do to start to dive into this work on your own. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you soon. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to follow the show on Apple or Spotify, leave a review, and share the show with your friends who you know are yearning for this type of content. When you leave a review, send us a screenshot and we'll send you a $250 credit that you can apply to joining anything new in my world. You can stay connected with me by following me on Instagram at Elise_breathes. Make sure you download my Clear Trauma cheat sheet at EliseBreathes.com. See you next time.